Good afternoon, I'm Milton Walker with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. The Jamaica Labour Party is projecting that it will win at least 40 of the 63 seats in the House of Representatives in the September 3 general election. We have more in this report.
General Secretary of the Jamaica Labour Party, Dr. Horace Chang, gave the projection during an interview on Beyond the Headlines on Radio Jamaica yesterday. Dr. Chang noted that the party is enjoying an even higher favorability rating than it did in 2016, when it was able to wrestle 11 seats from the People's National Party.
We will pick up a few more seats from the People's National Party, so I'm looking at getting 40 and thereabouts. I expect that to be minimal. I've said that elsewhere, because I do see where we can pick up about 6 seats fairly comfortable, based on the candidates we have in a number of them, and I said some coattails from the party leader. We have a number of new young candidates who I feel very comfortable working with. We have attracted, on this occasion, as I said yesterday, 18 female candidates for the first time, and I think we have some very exciting young female candidates, and even if not so young, but the kind of personalities will not only prove them to be like the personalities to run, but they also do the work.
The JLP had initially won 32 seats to the PNP's 31 in 2016. However, it has since picked up 2 more through by-elections. The JLP will need to retain those seats and add another 6 to meet its current projection. Dr. Chang says Trelawney North and Hanover West are among the seats the JLP is targeting.
Tova Hamilton, who is in North Trelawney, an excellent candidate, outstanding personality. I feel very confident she can, in fact, shape the PNP dominance in that seat. She is a hard worker, very astute, very smart, and connects very well with people. She's one of the new generation, I think, that is going to not only bring us success, but bring value added to Parliament. The candidate in East West Hanover is a very quiet person. He's going up against a tough candidate, but she's a strong local personality, and again, she could really give Ian Hayes a run for the money.
But Member of Parliament for Trelawney North, Victor Wright, is confident the seat will remain in the fold of the PNP after the election.
Well, based on the work that we are doing and based on the numbers we're having and what we're seeing on the ground, I think Dr. Chang is just doing what he has to do and say what he has to say. But there's no way that we're very confident in our numbers, we're confident in our strategy, and North Trelawney will be returned to the People's National Party in the winning column on the night of September 3rd.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
For the first time in the country's political history, the campaign finance regulation will be enforced for a general election. Executive Director for the National Integrity Action, Trevor Monroe, explains that the regulation limits contributions for campaigning activities to both political parties. The regulation stipulates that political parties can spend a maximum of $630 million for campaigning activities in all 63 constituencies.
The law limits the contribution of any entity or individual to any political party contesting those elections to 5%, which is a plus. 31.5 million is all that could be contributed to a political party in the context of a general election.
While the regulation will facilitate the monitoring of campaign finance, Professor Monroe says it has loopholes as it only applies to the campaign period. Therefore, he wants the regulation to be amended.
I could be giving all year round to the political party or the candidate prospective X number of money, dollars, far exceeding the limits. And all I would need to do to get around that limitation, for example, is to give $10 million every month to party X, and that would not be in breach of the law, because the limitation on contributions applies only the day after the election is announced, to the election itself, and thereafter the reporting period is 180 days. The disclosure should not only apply to the Electoral Commission and to that limited period, it should apply all year round so that the public should know who is giving how much to who therefore, in the old saying, is the piper and therefore has the ability to call the tune after an election is over.
The opposition People's National Party, the PNP, is not against persons in quarantine being allowed to vote in the September 3 general election. Opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Murray Sky, says while there is a risk involved, he agrees that special arrangements can be put in place to facilitate quarantined individuals.
As long as the social distancing and the other protocols related to spread are observed, it is our view that those persons in quarantine should be allowed to exercise their constitutional right. When you consider that we have probably about 26,000 persons, as indicated by the data from the Ministry of Health, who are in some form of quarantine, whether it is home or state, then that may have a significant impact on the polls. So what we're asking these persons who are going to be allowed to vote is that they practice the social distancing, the mask wearing, and of course, as soon as they have voted, to go back home. This will be my recommendation.
He says the matter has been discussed with the governing Jamaica Labour Party. Dr. Guy says the Ministry of Health is to make a decision on the issue. At yesterday's COVID-19 media briefing, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jacqueline Biseso Mackenzie said quarantine persons could be allowed to cast their ballots, but under certain conditions.
We are looking at some guidelines for those precautions in terms of the person that is in quarantine. We also have to look at the communities that are in quarantine to see what are the guidelines, and we have to work with the electoral office to see how communities in quarantine voting can be facilitated in terms of their safe movement. And what we're really hoping is that we have not started the discussions, and so I really don't want to go beyond what it's not in our jurisdiction to speak about. But we are looking in terms of how it is that can be facilitated, and so we have to have some discussion very shortly about that.
Earlier this week, Director of Elections Glasspool Brown disclosed that special provisions will be made for voters who displayed symptoms of the coronavirus. There has been a further setback in having private laboratories test for COVID-19. It was expected that at least one lab would have been conducting tests after the Ministry of Health disclosed 2 weeks ago that it was wrapping up negotiations with the operators. However, at yesterday's COVID-19 media briefing, Director of the National Public Health Laboratory, Dr. Michelle Hamilton, said the lab did not meet all the requirements.
There is a validation study that has to be conducted, and just to explain that this validation study helps us to determine whether or not the results obtained by the labs would be similar to the results we would obtain if we did the test ourselves. So it's to say, yes, you can test, but would the result that you obtain be the result that would be had if we had done the testing ourselves? And it is very important that this be done prior to giving endorsement of any services, because this is a means of ensuring that we provide accurate and also safe testing.
Dr. Hamilton says the ministry will continue to work with the private lab to ensure they meet all the requirements. We take a break now on the Midday News. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and we continue the news. The issue of inadequate care packages continues to be a sore point in areas under quarantine. In St. Thomas, residents complain that there are not enough to meet their basic needs. This despite assurances from the Health Ministry, which say otherwise. Krista Campbell has been covering the 3 quarantine communities in St. Thomas.
Church Corner, Summit and Bamboo River in Morant Bay, St. Thomas under a 14-day quarantine, and residents are not allowed to leave the area even on the 3 allotted shopping days. The security forces say they have to shop within the quarantine zone so as to prevent persons from fleeing to and possibly infecting other communities. At the start of the quarantine, Member of Parliament for St. Thomas Eastern, Dr. Fenton Ferguson, pressed Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton to ensure the complaints about inadequate food and water from previous quarantines were not repeated. A day after the quarantine took effect in St. Thomas, this was Dr. Tufton's response.
If there are anything like what goes into the other communities, it's a lovely package. You can feed a family of 4 for at least
5 days. At least 5 days. So
we'll be a bad package.
But 6 days in, residents say otherwise.
They give you 2 pounds of rice, 2 pounds flour, two tin mackerel, 2 sardines, 1 small bottle of oil. With a small family that maybe can last for 2 days or 3 days. But what about large families?
My daughter like porridge, so they have like cornmeal in there, can mix porridge, that's the only thing. Then I have no milk in there for make the porridge. I don't like thin things, and I basically thin things them I give you. So it's not really sufficient for me. Some people grateful for it, but me like my meat and my vegetable, and then I have that in my care package. My neighbor have children who need Pampers. No Pampers is in the care package.
The authorities had also given this assurance.
We'll be doing house-to-house distribution of care packages, hygiene kits, water.
I don't drink the pipe water. I have to buy bottled water and my water run out.
A resident of Bamboo River who spoke off camera said she'd only received food once, while for Florence DePass, who we caught up with going to purchase cooking oil on the second shopping day,
I go in the crowd there and I talk to the man that drive the van for I need some food and I never get any. I don't have nothing to eat, don't have any supply.
And amidst complaints that the security forces are preventing some residents from going to money shops to get funds, some turn to outside help for additional food supplies.
If it wasn't my garden, I would be on the suffering side.
When our news team was in the area on Wednesday, we saw a food van issuing packages to Bamboo River residents. Krista Campbell, TVJ News.
The Manchester police are reporting that they have arrested and charged several persons who have breached the COVID-19 protocols under the Disaster Risk Management Act. Head of the Manchester Police, Superintendent Gary Francis, says persons continue to disregard the measures implemented to contain the spread.
Breaching the curfew, being in the public outside of the curfew hour, that is really the major one. Others, persons opening their establishment when they should have been closing hours after being warned to close.
Superintendent Francis added that the police have been getting cooperation from other quarters to ensure that persons face the consequences.
And our parish judges are very, very kind to these offenders. They ensure they got the full penalty for the offenses that they have committed. We continue to enforce the act to ensure that we protect our nation.
Residents of Railway Lane in Montego Bay are complaining that the neglect of the area by successive administrations has now left them more susceptible to health risks. They say the infrastructure there is ancient and is in a deplorable state. The Member of Parliament says there are specific reasons why there's always been an issue with the drains. Kirk Wright visited the area and now reports.
The residents here say the general neglect of the area has led to unnecessary erosion of the infrastructure, which is now impacting their lives. A major recurring problem is the drain which runs through the community carrying wastewater from several areas of Montego Bay. It's often clogged and always has stagnant water producing mosquitoes. But Member of Parliament for Central St. James, Hero Clark, says it's not possible to get rid of the stagnant water.
What the residents and others have to understand is that that section, Railway Lane, is below sea level, and therefore at all times water is in the drain. You never get rid of all the water or everything from the drain.
Milton Hayes, or Titus, who has lived in the community for over 60 years, says 90% of the time when the drain is cleaned, it's not done properly.
They're not spending no time on cleaning to the bottom. And if it's not cleaning to the bottom, it just cannot work. You have to clean that so you can see the concrete right through. If they don't do it that way, it don't make sense.
The stagnant water carries a stench, which Mr. Hale says emanates from raw sewage. We could not verify his claim.
Right now, the scent type they affect me. If you look at my skin, you can see the mosquito them bump on and the children around here. it affects the whole entire community.
Mr. Clark says the reality is that people should not be living in that area. He says that their presence makes it harder to clean the drains.
But because of how certain section of the drains is situated with residents living as close as possible to the banks, equipment are not able to traverse that area to get it clean with equipment.
But he says money has been allocated and the drains will be cleaned this week. Caretaker candidate for Central St. James, Andre Hilton, claims the urban decay of Montego Bay has been allowed to go on for far too long.
If you look into other areas like Rose Heights and those areas going up the hill, it's a lot of informal settlement, which we plan to formalize. But right now you have the gullies just running wild. There's no organized collection of water, and therefore it comes down and it floods the city. So it's bigger than that. The drain cleaning is just a symptom of a bigger problem.
Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
Still in Montego Bay, the president of the Old Fort Craft Market in Montego Bay, St. James, Marlene Faulkner, is appealing to the authorities to intervene in a matter she says has been affecting the livelihood of craft vendors. This following an advisory indicating that tourists should not venture out of the hotels where they're staying. This, however, has caused some disquiet in the tourist sector, particularly among people who operate businesses in Montego Bay.
Before COVID, it was hard for us. Now, it is harder for us. You understand? It is very hard for us at the moment, right? My vendors are calling asking when will we open.
The shops were closed as a result of the coronavirus outbreak in Jamaica. Ms. Faulkner says if the tourists are allowed to visit the craft market, it could ease the current financial burden affecting the vendors.
But now we're seeing tourists coming in and we are not allowed to open. I don't know what we will do. I don't know if the government will give us another stimulus to help us through. Our parish council will help us with the rent. But as it is at the moment, it is very difficult for my vendors and myself. It's a very hard task, a very hard.
Firefighters were kept busy battling a massive fire in Highgate, St. Mary on Wednesday. The blaze destroyed a building housing 3 businesses, including a restaurant.
Well, I was in Kingston at the Coronation Market, preparing to come over with some goods for some agricultural produce. And I got a call about minutes to 10 saying that, me here. I say, hear what? Say, your place burned down.
The extent of the damage is not yet clear, but it's said to be quite significant.
In terms of values, I would have to pencil it out, but a lot.
Residents say the fire started sometime around 10 o'clock. You can hear explosions believed to be gas cylinders in the videos of the blaze that have been circulating. Investigations are ongoing to determine the official cause of the fire. Close to 250 students at Central High in Clarendon graduated yesterday. The ceremony was done using the drive-through method, which has become increasingly popular since COVID-19. But as you'll hear in this report, arranging the drive-through graduation was not easy because the school is attended by students from low-income homes where very few of their parents own a car.
This was the scene on August 2 in a section of the community known as Farm in Clarendon. 6 alleged gangsters were cut down by the police. It was an unsavory moment for the community. But fast forward nearly 2 weeks, and the students of Central High School showed Jamaica a more savory part of the farm community. Many of these students are high achievers. In total, 240 young men and women participated in the drive-through graduation ceremony at the school on Thursday.
I feel proud because I have 3 sons and one of them graduated and he's the second son to be graduate in this farm. So it's like, I told him he's been a part of history because he has never seen an epidemic as this.
This is a high school in a low-income community, so you are probably wondering what's up with the high-end cars.
We have chosen to do a drive-through, partnering with Magna Motors Limited out of Kingston. We have about 10 cars down here today, shuttling students from across our assembly points, that is Sinclair Bargain Center, and also the Church for Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints.
The teachers say these students deserve to be feted. They are the latest cohort that helped change the face of the school.
Our school has been fully transformed. Over the past 20 years, we have seen a good growth in the academic standings of the students. More so, our flagship product here is our quiz team that has been the #1 team in the community. I must say that our teachers are very dedicated, committed, and the team here, the Central Power team here, have been working assiduously with our students who are taken in. Our intake of students are from the lower level, but when we work with them, we're able to make them be on par with other students.
Attention now turned to getting the facility ready for the reopening of school in early September.
We have procured a direct internet line, so all our students will be able to get 8 megs of bandwidth for any device that they have connected on the compound. The only issue with that is that it's very costly. And in addition to that, we're also doing some remote learning where students will be given workbooks. These are hard copy documents that students can take home and navigate those documents. When they come to school, their teacher will be able to look at their progress.
Prince Moore, TVJ News.
And that's Midday News. I'm Milton Walker. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.